I'm in Raleigh with Angie and Cedar. We came up here because Angie wanted to go to a toddler and baby sale where they sell, I guess, discounted used strollers and clothes and things like that. While they were there, I drove up to Virginia to meet with the H2O mechanic who really hooked me up with everything I need for our well installation, including this roll of 300-foot black poly pipe. And I'm looking forward to installing all this stuff. I'd highly recommend getting in touch with H2O mechanic, especially if you need to order components. He has a lot of those barbed fittings that you need to install your well to the flexible poly pipe. He has well pumps and the electrical wire that goes down into the well. So I need to get this back down to South Carolina to get Angie and Cedar there before I can bring all of this back up to Virginia. The good news is this roll of pipe actually fits in my car if I don't have any passengers. So anyway, stick around and I'll show you what I'm up to on this episode of Kind Heart Homestead. Thanks. Behind me is the shipping container. I've had all of our possessions in here for the move. Instead of paying for a storage facility, I have everything in here. I have a bunch of these totes with most of our stuff in it, but this is also where all of my tools have been kept. So right now I'm getting out some supplies, got my air compressor, my table saw, and I think I'm gonna get out my generator here and fire it up, and we'll just see if everything's running smoothly. I need to finish up some blocking before the framing inspection can be done in our solar shed. And I also bought all of our well supplies, so I could potentially drop that down into the well and use the generator to power it just to test everything out. But I don't have the trenched line done to connect anything to the solar shed, but I also don't have our solar equipment yet. Dangerous times, don't fly too high. Be sure to keep them. I'm cutting up the rest of the concrete form board 2x6s to use as blocking between the ceiling joists. So these are going to be 24 inches long minus an inch and a half because it's 24 inches on center. And these blocks are basically just to stabilize and center the ceiling joists for drywall purposes, because the span is so long that potentially these boards could move and make it difficult to hit the stud. So if you recall, when I was putting the roof rafters in place, I did not use a ridge beam or a ridge board. And ridge beam is really unnecessary because that's a kind of a load-bearing support. My roof doesn't weigh that much. But a ridge board probably would have been the better way to go since I'm working by myself, and it would have given me something to stop and lean the boards against one at a time. And since I didn't do that, the peaks might not all line up, and it's not a big deal for a shed, but for a house, I think I learned my lesson and I'll use a ridge board next time. But from what I could tell, code says that if you don't use a ridge board, then you have to have gussets. It doesn't say how to secure the gussets, it doesn't say what they need to be made out of. So my idea was to use my scraps of zip sheathing. So I'm going to rip a board down to the height that the gusset needs to be, and then I'm going to cut it zigzag into triangles that should hopefully be similar in dimension. So I'm gonna grab my table saw now and get that started. So I'm not sure if you can see this, but I drew on this scrap piece of cardboard an actual sized gusset plate. that I plan to make out of the zip sheathing. You can see here, this height is similar enough to the scraps that I have of zip. So this one might not actually need to be ripped, but this one isn't even long enough. So this was just an example of the kind of scrap pieces that I have when I cut off the edges of the zip sheathing because they were too long for the roof. So if I can cut them around that size, they don't need to be as long because obviously I'm not going to put nails in that skinny of a space. So this one might be good enough for one. And I have the measurements on a separate piece of paper here. I'm going to go ahead and mock up one gusset and see how it works. So since this angle is so shallow, I had to do the trick where you subtract your actual slope from 90. So 90 minus 18.5 is 71.5. So I took my square, took it to the 71.5 degree mark, and traced the line. And since I don't have to rip this one, I'm going to go ahead and just cut it into a triangle and see if it fits. I have my first gusset. So the sample gusset fit. I can go a bit taller since my scraps, I believe, have a wider dimension to them. I'll be able to rip them to the appropriate height, and then I can cut it into triangles.
Find myself wondering what did happen to the last 10. I ran away with my life, fast forward, never turn back again. It's kind of funny that the more we pass time, the more we need to set the rewind. And 19 was the year I had to leave you, but now I'm seeing all the signs. Is this really happening? I can't believe it's true. I'm just as surprised as you. Is this really happening? I can't be too sure, but one day I'll be yours again. Life lessons come one in a dozen, the other 11 give something from nothing. I sit here looking for an answer. Maybe the biggest question was in the last chapter. You gave me the soul I have today. Without you I never could have moved away. But now I see what you teach. I do believe I always should have stayed. Yeah. Is this really happening? I can't believe it's true. I'm just as surprised as you. Is this really happening? I can't be too sure, but one day I'll be yours again. I'll be one day I'll be yours. I'll be yours. Life lessons come one in a dozen, the other 11 give something from nothing. Life lessons come one in a dozen, the other 11 give something from nothing. Life lessons come one in a dozen, the other 11 give something from nothing. Life changes just open the door. One thing's certain, I'll always be yours. Is this really happening? I can't believe it's true. I'm just as surprised as you.
That generator is very heavy. Even though it has wheels, still a lot of weight to pull, especially in tall grass like this. I'm sure on concrete it would be a lot easier. Anyway, I brought the generator over because once I drop this well pump down into the well, I want to be able to test the motor, and obviously I'd like to try to exchange the pump if there's anything wrong with it. But it's better to figure that out sooner than later. Before I start installing the underground line trenched over to the shed and the pressure tank and all the solar stuff, you know, if something goes wrong then, it would take a lot longer to diagnose to figure out which component is the problem, especially since I've never done solar before. If I run it this way through the generator, the only connections are from the generator to the wire, and then the wire to the pump. So a lot fewer connections. Anyway, the first thing I need to do is roll out the full length of wire. That is my limiting factor for the depth, is the length of the wire. I was told it's a 150-foot spool, but there's no sense in cutting the flexible pump line to 150 feet if the wire is a slightly different length. So what I should do is match the plumbing pipe to the electrical line, and I'm gonna roll them both, I guess either down the hill or over to the pasture over there. Haven't decided yet, but I was told that this black poly pipe, if you lay it out in the sun, it'll get softer. And since the sun's out now, I'd like to get this laid out. By watching several videos on the H2O Mechanic YouTube channel, I've familiarized myself with this process and how to install the well pump, do the wiring, and to secure the wiring to the flexible pipe. The way that he explains to do it is to use good quality electrical tape, make a few passes around the wire and the flexible pipe to secure the two together. But do that every 3 feet, I believe. I basically just stepped it off, and each large step I took, I would do 4 revolutions of tape, and then I finally cut the flexible piping at the end of the electrical wire. If you have any desire to install your own well pump, I'd highly suggest checking out the H2O Mechanic YouTube channel, and I'll be sure to put a link down in the show notes below. All right, I heated up the poly line to get this barbed 90-degree fitting in. Then I put the 2 hose clamps over it. And all of that is through this well cap. And it's designed to perfectly fit this and seal it out. But what I do want to do is drop this in and see if I can fire it up with the generator. Since I have my generator out and it's so heavy to do this on a regular basis, I decided now was the best time to check the flow rate of my new well pump system. Using a 5-gallon bucket, I could time the water to see how long it takes to fill the bucket. In this example, I actually filled it twice because it's a bit easier to do round numbers of 10 than 5. So as you can see here, I was able to fill up this bucket twice in 20 seconds. And if you do some basic math, 20 goes into 60 3 times. So I multiplied the gallons by 3, and that's 30 gallons per minute. Pretty impressive, right? It's time to start on this utility room and bathroom partition wall. And the reason why I haven't put this up yet is because it's a very inconvenient place to have a wall when I have the scaffolding and ladders in here. It's going to severely limit my mobility to be working on this structure. So I was waiting till the absolute last moment, which is essentially right before the framing inspection needs to occur. So right here you can see I'm putting some blocks every 2 feet in between 2 of the ceiling joists. This is because the wall doesn't line up with the joist, but it falls between it. So this gives me about a 2-foot range of flexibility to move the wall if for some reason I needed to, but in this situation I can't because the plumbing pipes are trapped in concrete and they cannot be moved. So I used a plumb bob to determine where this double top plate needs to go to line up with the plumbing pipe below. So you can see here, I did not have 2x4s long enough. I must have used them somewhere else on the project without knowing it, but any 2x4s will work. I just have to stagger the seams. Compared to the bottom plates, the top plates are relatively easy because I can simply nail them vertically into the blocking above. You can see here I'm snapping a temporary chalk line to indicate where the plumb bob touched the concrete floor where the wall is going to be placed. And I need this not only to make sure where the wall is plumb, but also because I need to know where the glue needs to go to secure the pressure-treated bottom plate to the concrete. And because construction adhesive is such a pain to wash off, I want to make sure none of it gets squeezed out beyond the footprint of the wall itself. I generously applied 2 thick beads of construction adhesive to secure my pressure-treated bottom plate to the concrete, and then I wedged studs in place to exert even pressure along the board to secure it to the floor. Again, I'm using the 93-inch studs like I used for the rest of the project, and I'm actually running short on wood, so here you can see me placing studs on every other space just to conserve wood for now, and then I'll go back and add the rest of them later. But I just need to have even pressure exerted downward so the construction adhesive can completely bond the 2x4 to the floor. Originally, I had simply placed these and hammered them into place to wedge them in, but then I had to go back and use my galvanized nails to firmly secure these, and I used my level to make sure each of them was plumb and true and that the wall was going to be as straight as possible. I had to reverse layout for this one wall, measuring 16 inches on center from the north instead of the south wall, because I needed the plumbing pipe to fit between studs, and the other layout put a stud right in the middle of the pipe. Anyway, this wall is basically completed. I don't need any fasteners to secure this to the floor right now because everything's wedged into place, but I might add some Tapcons later for strength because this is the wall that all of my batteries and inverters and electrical panel is going to hang on. So if you want to see all of that, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you next time on Kind Heart Homestead.